All right, well, good morning and good afternoon, everybody. This is David Zavisland, Nolte's CAD manager. The session we're going to be doing today is the AutoCAD 2009 Upgrade Training Part 2. Just a little housekeeping business here. If you do ask questions through the question window, I probably will ignore them throughout the presentation here because once I get going, I'm not stopping here, so I'll kind of blow through. But what I will do, any questions that you do ask, I will reply in an email to everybody who attended the session, any answers that I have for those questions. So feel free to type in questions and ask questions, but I probably, because of the amount of material I have to cover today, I won't have time to get to those. All right, so let's jump right in here. All right, last week, for everybody who attended last week's session, just a little reminder on what we covered. Talked a little bit about the training handouts available through the CAD support page. And then in terms of AutoCAD, we talked about file compatibility between the two different versions of AutoCAD 2009 and 2007. And the main issues we'll see on that are going to be with the land desktop and Civil 3D objects that are created in the drawings. And that's going to be things like contours, points, and then for Civil 3D, all the model components such as alignments, profiles, and surfaces. Those will not be compatible with 2007. LDT 2009 and Civil 3D 2009 do have the file export to AutoCAD commands, which will explode all of their unique objects back to AutoCAD entities if you do need to send files out to clients using any previous versions of AutoCAD. We spent some time last week going over the AutoCAD interface, showing you things like the ribbon and the buttons on the status bar. We'll address a couple of those today as we start looking at annotative text. We'll touch on a couple more of the buttons down on the status bar that we didn't cover last week. We looked at the quick properties tool option, and we also looked at the new layer property manager. That is a modeless dialog that lets you manipulate layers kind of real time while you're working in the drawing. And then we also looked at the viewport properties that you can now control viewport color and line type for layers as opposed to just the viewport freeze that we had in 2007. And then I finished up last week. We looked at the new invert option of XREF clipping that lets you clip a hole in an XREF to display an area outside a boundary as opposed to inside the clip boundary. So that's what we did last week. This week what we're going to look at, let me get my PowerPoint updated here. All right, so this week we're going to start off. I'm going to do just a few items on 3D viewing. I'm going to not try not to spend a whole lot of time there. We'll look at a tool called the Action Recorder, which lets you create your own macros, so to speak, kind of your own custom programs for those of you who don't know how to do scripting or don't know any Lisp or VBA programming. It's a great way to capture some of the repetitive tasks that we do and then play them back in future drawings, so I'll go through that. We'll look at the new annotative text and dimensioning functions in AutoCAD. I think this is probably one of the bigger items that we'll probably utilize in 2009. Annotative text and dimensions allow you to control the height of the text by using an annotative or a viewport scale, and everything is specified based on plotted units as opposed to what we currently do right now, where we have to multiply our plotted units times our drawing scale and then manually put in our text height that way. We'll look at some of the new tools or new functionality of the mText entities in AutoCAD 2009. We'll look at a couple of the enhancements to dimensions, some of the enhancements to tables we'll take a look at, and then if I have time today in my eagerness to show you everything, we'll look at the new PDF extension, which is in Civil 3D 2009. That is not available in the LDT version of the program. It's only in Civil 3D, and what that has is there's a new plotting or plot driver to generate PDF files that gives you a lot more control over the current driver that's in AutoCAD. And then the PDF extension allows you to reference a PDF file just like you would attach a raster image, an XREF, or a DWF file. Civil 3D 2009 with this update, this PDF extension allows you to overlay or insert raster images, and hopefully I'll have time to show you that. Anything I skip over, anything I don't have time to get to today, again, I point you to the online handout, the AutoCAD 2009 upgrade training on the CAD support site. Has some AVIs that I recorded on a lot of these items, plus some additional text. Also encourage you to look at the new features workshop available on the help pull down in AutoCAD, and then also the AutoCAD help documents themselves for any additional information on these items. All right, let's move on here. That's it for PowerPoint. I'm going to jump into my project now, into my demo here, and I'm doing everything today in the Civil 3D version of AutoCAD, but most everything I'm going to show you is available in any either version of AutoCAD, whether it's Civil 3D or Land Desktop, and then any of the profiles we have. And the only exception to that is going to be that PDF underlay option or function that I'll show at the end of today's session. That is only going to be available in the Civil 3D version of AutoCAD. It's not, Autodesk did not make that available for the Land Desktop version. All right, so 3D viewing, what I'm going to do is, let's restore into a 3D view here. So I've got my site. I'm using Civil 3D, and when I go to the 3D mode, my surfaces, but based on the style I'm using, are going to show me triangles, and we can see, get a view of what those look like here. And what I can do is maybe go to a conceptual style here. So we can do kind of a solid fill or shading. And I do apologize, my laptop video driver does not do a very good job of 3D viewing, and you'll see on my surface for some reason I get these little black lines all over the place, where when we do this on the workstations it looks just fine. But what I want to show is some of the view options. And by going into a 3D view, one of the things that you're going to see here is in the upper right corner of my view area, I get this new tool here, and this is called the View Cube. And what this does is it functions a lot like the Orbit command, but it's kind of a real-time tool or function. And what I can do is, if I want to do a front view, I can click on front here, and it will spin my view right around the front. Or if I click on one of the corners here, it will take me to that isometric or that corner view. So you can see I'm in the front right corner. If I want to go to the back left corner, I can click back here, and you'll see it'll spin my model around to where I can see that corner. And I can always click back on top, and that will take me back to top view. I've got my north rotation wrong, so we got a couple of arrows here that I can use to rotate it. So I'll just click one of those once, and it'll spin my site back around to where north is straight up on my page. I can also use this, besides clicking on any of the items, I can actually pick on it and then hold my mouse button. And then as I drag it, I can get kind of a real-time rotation, very similar to what we were used to seeing with the Orbit command. All right, so let me zoom in a little bit on my site here. One thing I like to do is get my view set to where I'm looking at it from a good angle above, and then if I click on one of my compass directions here and I hold my mouse and spin it, you'll see it now stays in that relative plane. So as I move it around, I'm going to stay above my model or above my site, whereas with the Orbit command it was real easy to get kind of turned around and upside down. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll come in here. Some of the other options on here, let me right-click on the View Cube, and we can switch our view between a parallel view or perspective view. And I can also save my current view as what's called the Home View. So let me do that. So I'm going to say Set Current View as Home View. And what that's for is if we ever get, I use the pan, hang on a second, let me tweak my cube. So say I get all turned around and I'm upside down, I can always click on this little house button here at the top of the View Cube, and that will then pop my view back around to that home or that default view. So some real neat functionality in here. Let me right-click once more. Other things we can do under View Cube settings, we can control the size of the cube, where it's located on the screen. We can control whether or not we see the UCS, and a few other options here, but I'll let you guys go ahead and read those on your own. Okay, so that's the view cube. So that's one way in 2009 that assists you in manipulating your 3D views so you can see what's going on. Another tool they have is called the steering wheel, and that can be activated off a button down here on the status bar. So it's this little button down here next to my pan and zoom buttons, and we'll go ahead and click on that. And as I move my cursor now, you'll see it brings up this little feature here called the steering wheel, and it has some of our view manipulation commands built into it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to center my view, so I'm going to click on the center option, and I'm going to pick, maybe I'll pick on my median right there, and it'll actually move that to the center. All right. So then what I can do is maybe come in here and do a look. And what look does is, instead of orbiting my sight, is look turns my head. Okay, so I'm actually basically not my head necessarily, but the term AutoCAD would use is you're turning the camera. We're pivoting the camera as opposed to rotating about the sight. Okay, so that was the look tool, and that comes back up. And what else do we have in here? I can zoom on the point, so we'll go ahead and click on zoom, and now it'll zoom in on that target. So I can zoom a little bit closer, and this may be where the look will come in a little bit better. So now I can kind of look around my model and see what's going on here. Maybe look down to the end of my roadway. All right, so we can come in here, look down to the end of the road. I can also do just my AutoCAD pan and zoom. Okay, and if you're too high above your model, we got this up-down option here where I can now raise and lower myself or change the elevation of my camera. Okay, see here what else haven't done. Center, we can always go into the AutoCAD orbit, okay, where I'm now pivoting about my pivot point as opposed to turning my head or turning my camera. And then the last thing they have on here that I'll do is this option, well, second to last, I guess, is they called walkthrough. So let me click on walkthrough. And what this will do now is, as I move my cursor away from that circle down at the bottom of my screen, I can turn and go at different directions, or I can move down my sight, okay, and then until I get to the end of my model. And then maybe I want to do then is look, and I'll turn my head around. And bear with me, as it takes a little bit of practice to get used to this. There we go. And I can now look down the other end of my road and maybe go back into walk mode here and then walk back up my roadway. Okay, and again, just based on the direction I move my cursor, and that little arrow will indicate the direction I go, and then the further I get away from that circle, the faster it's going to go. Okay, so we can work our way down our roadway here. All right, so I'll let go of my mouse. As soon as I let go of my mouse button, the steering wheel is going to pop back up. And then the last option on here that I'm going to look at is this thing called Rewind. So let me click on Rewind, and what it does is I get a little slideshow of all of the views I did, and then just by dragging my cursor back through here, I can go back to other views. Okay, so if I decide I want to go back and look at something else, and this is only going to be saved in this current edit session here, so I can return back to that view that I like. Okay, so that's a pretty neat tool here. Options at the bottom is this little down arrow button here, and we get some options. We can change to different style of steering wheels. They have some mini wheels, so like mini building tour wheel just has a couple of functions on here where we can do walkthrough, look, up, down, and then rewind are the options here. And then we also have some other wheels, so I can say maybe do my tour building wheel. And the look is kind of neat here. Oh, not look. I want to do forward. There it is. Forward, it will let me zoom in and investigate something, so I can look at my curb and then pull back out to where I was. Okay, or I can go forward. Maybe I want to look at this slope right here, so I'll say forward at this point right here, and then it'll let me zoom in on that slope, and then I can pull it back out again, and then when I let go of my mouse, it'll pop back up to the steering wheel. All right, so let me close that down. So real neat tools here. There's a third item here that I'm not going to do in today's session, but I encourage you to look at. It's this button here, and it's called Show Motion, where you can actually record different views and different walkthroughs and actually play them back as an animation. So we can actually record how we move around in our drawing, save views, save walkthroughs, and then play them back at a later time. But I don't have time to show you that today. So that is the 3D viewing. Hopefully some neat tools. Those of you who have problems with the orbit command, hopefully this will be a much better utilities for you. All right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch another drawing, and while that's loading up is let's take a poll here and ask you guys some questions here. What I'd like to know is how quickly do you think you can attach 8 XREFs, so standard XREF files, standard master files, on the correct XREF layer using the overlay option at 00 and at using the overlay option. So if you can go ahead and vote on that. All right, so go ahead and click on the screen what option you think you can do. Wow, you guys are pretty honest. The last time I did this class, I had quite a few people. Oh, we got a couple there who think they can do it under a minute. All right, so I'll have to see later if that's really true. So 8 XREFs we're talking here. That's some pretty quick typing. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll, and we'll view the results here. So this is how everybody voted. So I had, out of everybody who's attending, 2 said they can do it in less than a minute. 2 said they could do it in 1 to 3 minutes, and 2 of you are, I think, a little more honest, and 3 to 8 minutes is probably more realistic. So this may be more for the 1 to 8 minute folks than the speedy folks here. All right, so let's hide the results. The reason I'm asking that is I'm going to show you how we can automate this. And what I've done now is I'll show you, I've already recorded this, but I've got a sheet drawing that I've made here, my IPO5, and I've already done my sheet 4. And what I did is when I attached all my XREFs in sheet 4, I recorded those commands. And I did it using a tool called Action Recorder. And I'm actually going to do this through the ribbon panel here. So I'm going to click on this button to show my ribbon. And then I'm going to go to the Tools tab. And on the far left here is this item called Action Recorder. And what I've done is I've recorded a couple of macros to help me set up the sheets for this project. So I've got one that does attach XREF. So let me go ahead and select on that one. And I'm going to expand the panel here, and this lets me see what the macro is actually going to do. So I can expand the panel, and it shows me all the commands. And the first thing I did is I turned off the file dialog prompt or file DIA variable, so that way when I do the XREF or insert commands, they don't prompt me for, I'm in the wrong macro. Let me switch here. I want the attach XREFs macro. There we go. That makes more sense. First thing I do is I'm going to use the dash layer command here, dash LA or dash layer, and that will do it via the command line. If you record a macro using the dialogues, the macros are going to stop with the dialogue, and they're going to wait for you to put something in the dialogue, and then as soon as you pick OK, it will continue on with the macro. If you want the macro to be as automated as possible, use the command line version of commands, which is going to be the dash layer. We'll bring up the command line version. I'm going to make a layer. I'm going to make the XREF layer, hit enter to finish the command. Then I'm going to use the Nolte XR macro. This is actually a Lisp routine that we're using. And the Action Recorder will work with Lisp routines and VBA functions as long as they're already loaded in your drawings. As long as you're using our standard profiles, this will work. I load the EXMA drawing. I zoom extents to make sure it shows up on my sheet. And then we do XREF attach all the other master files, and it will complete that for us. So somebody time me here. So I've got my macro selected here. I'm going to hit the play button, and we'll see as it's playing, it'll go through, attach them all. So I got about 10 seconds on that. So for those of you thinking do it under a minute, can you do that in 10 seconds? All right. If you don't want this message popping up every time you run it, we can always tell it, hey, don't show me this anymore. But I tend to leave mine in stock mode. But there we are, 8 XREFs all on the right layer, all attached correctly. They're all overlays. Okay, so real quick, so what you do is you set up the first sheet, you record how you set it up, and then as I set up subsequent sheets, I can play that back. All right, well, let me go down to my layout now, and let me look at my other sheet setup one here, and we'll look at that one. This one is where I was setting the file file DIA to 0 because I don't want to be prompted with the file dialog when I go to insert my XREFs or my blocks. So I'm going to start off, I'm going to make a layer for my XREF. Okay, in case I haven't done that, it doesn't hurt to make it again. Okay, and then we're going to use the XREF command this time just to show you that one. We do the overlay, we grab our 22 by 34 title block. I'm going to place it at 0, 0, scale of 1, Y scale of 1, rotation of 0. And one of the things I recommend as you record macros, don't hit enter to accept the defaults by typing in a value. I can come back in here now and I can actually edit the values in here and say, you know, I want that to be at a scale of 2, and I can actually come in and edit and change these values here. Okay, well, I don't want to leave that at 2. Let me change that back to 1 because otherwise my title block is going to be too big. All right, so you can actually edit the macro here. Again, I zoom extents, then I set layer, and I made a mistake on here. I actually tried to do a new make a layer, and you can't make layer 0. So, and I can't delete prompts within my command. I can add messages or change it to where it requests user input, but I can only delete whole commands here. So I could delete the entire layer command, but I couldn't delete this one, so I had to come in here and I can edit my prompt here, so I could change that to what I was going to or fix that. Also, I want to point out here, as I hover on here, my mouse moved, you'll see it will actually show me what this is a response to. So if you look at that tooltip, now let's see if I can keep it up here. Okay, there's the tooltip. Is that prompt was asking me for the layer name. Okay, if I come down to insert, down here, hover over what I'm inserting, it was asking for a block name. All right, so we'll go through. My block has lots of attributes. I didn't populate any of them. I just hit enter on them. Then I do the viewport layer, make a viewport, make a second viewport, and then I set up my viewports using the NV setup command, set their scale to 20, and then when I'm done, I set file DIA back to 1. So that's everything it's going to do here. It's going to add my title block and set up 2 viewports at the right scale. So again, I'll hit the play button, and it will go through, process everything, attach it all, and it's done. So again, real quick, I can go through the process of setting this up, and then I just record it once and then play it back. All right, to show you how this works, let me actually record a macro here. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to click on the record button. And as I'm recording, it will show me in the action tree what I am recording, what my commands are. The toolbox here, the tool palette, turns this kind of pulsating reddish pink color. And then near my crosshair, I get the little red record icon on there, just like your video camera. And that indicates that I'm in record mode. All right, and actually let me stop that. I didn't want to record yet. I'm going to actually be in my viewport, okay, but I don't want to record that, so I'm going to start in the viewport. So I'm going to record now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a block. So I'm going to do the insert command. I'm actually going to do the dialog here, and I'm going to insert my north arrow, so N arrow. Insertion point I'm going to specify on screen, but scale, let me turn that off. And when I set my viewports, I think I did those at 20 scale, and then we'll leave rotation at 0. All right, and I will put it right there. All right, so that brings that in. And then what I'd like to do is move that actually to my layout. So I'm going to do the change space command, which is from Express Tools, and I will click on that and then hit enter. And okay, so hit enter twice, and that actually moves that object to model space. But I'm done with what I want to do now, so I'm going to stop recording. So real simple macro here, and I'll call it north arrow number 1. Your macro names are actually going to be file names. So right now, the way they're doing it, you cannot have any spaces in the name, and you'll see it saving it to your Civil 3D 2009, or if you're in Land Desktop, it'll be your LDT 2009 support and then actions folder. There is also a folder on the Q drive with the same path where you can put macros that you want to share with your entire office. So it's the exact same path, but on the Q drive, all of those macros will show up when you go to your action recorder. All right, so we'll pick OK to that. All right, so we'll see. Let me grip edit that. So you can see I've moved that in to my layout so I can move it around in paper space. wherever I want. So let me play this one back now so we can try it again here. So let me go into my viewport and then we'll hit play. All right. Because I use the dialog, it's always going to stop and ask me for the dialog here. All right. So I've got this, and again, I have to come in. I have to pick what scale I want. So I want 20. Actually, let me go uniform, and then pick OK. And then we'll pick OK to that. All right. So my insertion point now is always going to be at that one location. If I want a different insertion point, I can right-click on here and then tell it to request user input. Okay, so now when I play it back here, so let me come back and play it now. So again, I want a 20 scale, pick OK, and then we'll see it's going to let me pick where it goes. So now I can pick it, and then we're done. And again, I've brought that in. Okay, so I've brought that into my model space. So let me do a different version of this now. All right, so let me record again, and this time I'm going to do the dash insert. And again, I want to type in my name, and then I'll pick my insertion point, and scale factor of 20, and Y scale factor. I'm going to hit return for this one. That way I know it's always going to use the same scale factor as I did the other one, and then a rotation angle of 0. And then again, I can do the change, SPACE, maybe do my last object here, and then hit return a couple of times, and then I'm done recording. So let me stop that one, and we'll call this north arrow number 2. All right, again, let me move this guy off the side. All right, so by changing this now, this one will be a lot quicker here, so I'll go pick in my viewport, hit the play button, and that's it. That one does everything. So by not having that dialog in there, I can go through real quickly and make it do whatever I want. Again, if I want different scales, I can come in here, request user input, maybe also add, insert a message. Enter the scale for the north arrow. All right, pick OK to that. So now when I play this one, oh, I'm in the wrong viewport. I got to pick in my viewport. Let me play again. And now here's my prompt. Enter the scale for north arrow. Yes, I want to continue. I want to provide input. So we'll go 20 and pick OK. Oops, I should have put a different scale in. But anyhow, so you can kind of get the idea how these macros, you can string them together. Let me try erase. I'm cleaning up my drawing here. Erase all those. But you can string them together. You can change the prompts. You can change the values. One of the things I want to point out on the coordinates here is on our sheet setup macro here. The very first coordinate that you specify will be absolute coordinates. You can see it's 0, 0 was my insertion point. When I come down in and then I insert my next one, well, that one was also 0, 0, but as I come in and do my viewports, what you're going to see is these have the little @ symbol in front of them indicating that they are absolute coordinates. So what will happen then is if I change the preceding coordinates, and I'm not sure why that one is oh, I can change it relative to previous. There we go. All right, so I can change that one relative to previous. So now if I come in here and say, well, let's change this one here. Come on, there we go. Double click on that and say we'll go to 100, 100. And what we'll do is we'll leave that one there, and then I'll play this back. Is what we'll see is, oh, I need to be in my layout here. There we go. And then we'll play that back. Is it will set it up again. All right. And I will now get the exact same thing, but this time it'll be at 100, 100 as opposed to down at 0, 0. And everything else being at, relative coordinates, excuse me, will make sure that those XREFs and all those viewports will come in at the right location. I can also modify any of these, change the coordinates if I want different size viewports or whatever. All right, so anyhow, let me erase this, get this back to here, save my file. When I'm done, I can unclick the little pin here, and that will let the action recorder roll back up All right, so neat tool. Hopefully you saw something. Again, apply this to any task that you see that, gosh, I have to do these 6 things over and over again, especially when you're editing sheet drawings, you're doing red lines and markups. I got to add a drawing scale block to every sheet. Well, do it on the first sheet, record everything that you do, and then when you go to the remaining sheets in the sheet set, you just play it back. All right, some real neat stuff here. Okay, so that was Action Recorder. Moving along now, let's look at annotative text here. And I've actually got, oops, I need to open my drawing here. So let me go open. And I'm going to work in my sheet number 4 drawing. All right, so annotative. All right, again, this is probably one of the more compelling features, I think, of 2009 that I will probably try to incorporate more and more in what I do. All right, sheet setup, I got 2 viewports here. If I double click in this viewport, we'll see that my viewport scale icon down here on my status bar is showing me that viewport's at 1 to 50. And I click into this viewport, and we'll see that viewport is 1 to 10. And this list is, you can quickly change and zoom, and this is using the same scale list as our annotation scales, which I'll show you in just a bit here. But a nice way to control what our viewport scales are. All right, so let me go back now into model space. What I want to do is I want to do some labeling that will appear at 50 scale in the 50 scale viewport and at 10 scale in the 10 scale viewport. All right, and we can set this up so that they only show up in the viewports based on the scale. All right, and the idea then is I don't need to have different layers for the different text like we've done in the past. I don't have to have a 50 scale layer and a 10 scale layer and then freeze those in the opposite viewports there. All right, so let's start off here. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to put a big piece of text here to say for more information here, go look at the 10 scale or at the detail view here. All right, first thing I want to do is on my status bar here, I'm going to set what my annotation scale is. So I'm going to be labeling at 50 scale. So I'm going to come in here and set to 50. Okay. One of the things that happened also while I'm doing that is you'll notice my line types changed. Okay, so let me change that back to like 10 scale. And you'll see that the line types change. And the way it does that is there's a new variable called MSLT scale. And I've got that turned on, and it behaves just like PSLT scale is the right one. Because if I look at my LT scale value, I've got that set to 1, which is my paper space scale, one unit. By having that to 1 and then turning on both MSLT scale and PSLT scale, my views will always show me my line type based on this annotation scale, or while I'm in my paper space viewports, it'll show me the viewport scale. Okay, so that's kind of a nice feature here. So let me set this back to 50 scale. And then what I want to do is I'm going to use my Annotate tab here, and let me check my styles here. I've got one, but I want a 100 annotative scale. So I'm going to go into my text style dialog. All right, and what I want to do is I'm going to make a new style here. So we can see right now my L100 is set up for 50 scale. It's 5 units high, but I want to use the same font at both 50 scale and at 10 scale. So I'm going to make a new font style here, and I'm going to call this L100, and I'm going to put an A on the end of it. It's kind of a standard I'm trying to promote here at Nolte, that our annotative scales have an A on the end just so we can kind of see what's going on. So let me pick OK. And then what I'll do is I'm going to use the simplex font, but down here for the size, instead of specifying an explicit height, I'm going to tell it to be annotative. And as soon as I toggle that on, what you'll see is I get the little scale icon here next to my font, also indicating that it's annotative scale. But then what I'll do is I'll put in what my paper space height is, and that's going to be 0.1, so it's 1/10 of an inch high. And then I'm going to set that style current. Yes, and we'll close our dialog down. So we'll see that that style is now current. All right, so 2 things going on here. I'm L100 annotative, which we set the height at 0.1, and then down here my annotation scale is 50. So if I do some M text here, and we'll just put a window here, and then I'll just say detail number 1. Okay, and maybe we'll throw in some background mask. And pick OK. So now I can move this around. All right, so that's at 50 scale. So if I change my annotation, a couple of things going on here. Visibility here, this shows annotative objects for all scales. I'm going to turn that off. And it's kind of hard to see, but the light bulb went from yellow to blue. And I'm going to change now to 10 scale. And what we'll see is while I'm in 10 scale now, any annotation that I did at 50 scale got turned off. All right. If I want to see all of the annotation, I can come back in and toggle this on, and now that'll show up so I can see all my annotation, but let me toggle it off and that'll go away. All right, so let me go back to 50 scale, and now back at 50 scale I see all my 50 scale annotations. So what I'd like to do is maybe do a little bit more labeling here, and I've got some annotative, I thought I had an annotated dimension style. Let me make an annotative dimension style as well, and I'm going to start with that one. And we'll start with that, and I'll just call it L100A, again following my naming format. And this point I'm going to tell it to be annotative right here. Okay, so I'm going to make this new style annotative, and we'll pick continue. And while I'm editing on the Fit tab, we do have an option here. I can turn on and off whether or not it's annotative. I'll leave that as annotated. And then what I want to do is on my dimension style, I want to make sure all my values, my numeric values, are based on paper space units or 1-inch scale. So everything I've set up here is using my inch scale. And then being annotative, it will scale everything based on the view scale or the annotative scale. All right. Now, one thing I do want to point out here for my text, this works best also if I select an annotative text style here. So I'm going to make sure I use that L100A. So I know that both my dimensioning and my text are annotative. And then again, we're going to use that annotative scale option here. So let me pick OK to that. And OK, so we've got that style set current. I think I got a bad arrowhead size here. Let me see what I've got. Oh, my arrowhead size is huge. We'll go 0.15 on that. Okay, that looks a little bit better. All right, and then what I can do is, I don't want to label at 50 scale, so let me jump back to 10 scale here, and I'll throw in some dimensioning here, and I'll just do an align dimension from, to my pipe here. Okay, so we can see it's 8 feet from there. I could do some other labels. But as we add this now, so I've got some 10 scale dimension, and I'll go back and switch to 50. There's my 50 scale dimensions. So let me go to my viewports now. So we'll see in my viewports here at 50 scale, we're seeing that label. But when I come over and look at my 10 scale, we can see there we're only seeing the dimension. All right, so that's kind of real quick and simple how these are going to behave. All right, so kind of keeping this in mind, let me throw in a few more labels here. I'm going to be working at 50 scale, and what I want to do is I want to put some callouts on my water meters here, and I'm going to look at a new function in 2009 called the multi-liter, and they've basically broken the multi-liter functionality out of dimensioning. So like dimensions, I have multi-liter styles, and let me go ahead and edit that style here. And we'll go ahead and pick modify. And what you set up on the style is what does your leader look like, what sizes do they have, what is the structure, how many points, is it splined, what's the landing distance, is it annotative, so I can have annotative styles also that will scale themselves based on the drawing scale, and then what do I want the content to be. And in this case, you can either go mtext block or you can just draw leaders. But I'm using a block, and I have a block here called circle with an attribute that lets me put in the tag number. Okay, so we'll pick OK to that and close. And what I'll do is I'll just draw in some multi-leaders here, and I'll just make up, this will be number 12. Okay, and I don't know why my arrows disappear on my laptop here, but if I do a regen, they show back up. So there's something going on with my display driver here where my arrows disappear. All right, well, I've got another water meter here that I also want to be number 10, but instead of drawing another multi-liter, what I can do is this button up here lets me add a leader. So let me click on that. We'll pick on that guy, and I'll drag a leader to that one. And I can pick in a whole, keep picking in leaders here, but I can create this multi-liter. Okay, let me do some more. Maybe I'll do some annotation on these guys here. So I want to do a valve, so we'll pull my valve off to here. That will be a number 2. And then I've got my T, and we'll throw one in here. That will be, I don't know, like a 7. And then we'll do one more here, and I've got another valve, and we'll do that's also number 2. And then again, maybe I don't know, let's keep going here. I've got this meter, and those were 12s. And I can go in and annotate all this stuff. And again, if I just do a quick regen, my arrowheads will show back up. All right. With these on here now, I like to keep my drafting kind of pretty. So we've got some other commands we can do here, where I can actually align several leaders. So what I'll do is I'll select my leaders. So we'll grab. Yep, I missed. All right, and then hit enter. And I can now pick which leader I want to align them all to this one. And then you'll see as I move my crosshair, they will all straighten up. So if I turn my ortho mode on, and we'll pick on that right there, I can now get them all to where they're lined up nice and straight. All right, and there are some other options for the aligning here. We'll just grab a couple of them. If I go O for options, I can do distribution where I can control the spacing between them. I can make their leader segments parallel. So if I want these two to be parallel to each other, I can have them do that. And I can also change different spacing options on here. All right, but I'm not going to change those. Other things I can do where it gets real crowded here is I can actually combine leaders. So it's called collect. And what I'll do then is collect. So I'll say I want to grab that one, and then hit return, and we'll pick a new insertion point. And what it does is it collects them all onto the last one that you picked. So the last one I picked was the one pointing to the valve, so it combined both of those onto that one for the valve. All right, so how are we doing? So we got some leaders done. Let me go back into my layout so we can see how our drafting is going on. So we can see, you know, there's all my 50 scale annotation. And then come down here, and I see, well, these 2 meters appear in this viewport as well, so maybe I'd like those labeled at 10 scale. So let me jump back into here. And what I can do then is up here on our toolbar, we've got this annotation scaling here on my ribbon under Annotate. And what this button does, it'll say, well, add current annotation scale. So let me change my scale to 10. All right. I need to see them to change them, so I'm going to turn on annotation visibility, so that lets me see all my annotations. And what I'll do is I'll select add current scale, and then I'll pick on this multi-leader object and then hit return, and that adds that one now to my 10 scale. And what I can do is I can actually come in here and grip edit this. Let me go F8. We'll drag this down to where I can see it. And while it's selected, you can see all the different versions that this object's going to display. So there's the 10 scale version. There's the 50 scale version. If I hit escape, I see just the current version. All right, and now I can toggle back to 50 scale. And there's the 50 scale version. Switch back to 10. And there's the 10 scale version. All right, let me click on this and right mouse click. And I'm not seeing. Let me try that again. There we go. I get my menu item for my annotative object scales. There I can add current scale. I can delete current scale. And then there's also a dialog which lets me manually add in and pick from my list and manually control what scales this piece of text or this text dimension or multi-leader will appear at. Okay, so we can do it manually. All right, and then again, let me just jump back to my viewports here. So now we can see that there's my 12 call out there, and there's the 10 scale version in this viewport. So hopefully you guys are seeing some good things there. I'd be curious as you guys progress on how you're doing with those. All right, time-wise, I need to speed it up here. So that was scales, not scales, that was the annotation scale for text and dimensions, and then also an introduction to the multi-leaders. And what I'm going to do now is let's jump over to a different file here. I've got some play drawings here, and I've got some drawings for dimensioning. And just a few things I want to show on dimensioning. Off here, if we come in, and if I do, say, a radius dimension, on this guy. One of the things we can do now is we can pull radiuses and diameters off the end of an arc, and we now get an arc or curved extension line, which is real nice. Come down here, we can add now a jog to a dimension line. So I come back into here, and there's my jog line. I select my dimension where I want my jog to be, and it will place a jog in my dimension line. I can actually grip at it and slide that around and place it where I want. Okay, and if you don't want the jog, I run my jog again, and then R for remove, pick my dimension, and it will remove the jog from my dimension line. So that's pretty cool. And then the last thing I want to show on dimensioning is they now have a button here, a command to break. It's called dim break, which lets you break dimension lines. So let me select on that. And what I'll do is say I want to break this dimension line, and then I can either do an auto, or I can say, well, I want to break it at that dimension line. And what it'll do then is it will add a gap where that is broken. But you'll see as I select this, it's still a single dimension object, so I don't have to explode it and break the extension line. It will stay that way. Okay, let me do it on this one here. So let me pick my break command, and then I'll pick this one. And then what I'll do here is I'll do A for auto, and that will break it everywhere it crosses any object. So we can see where it crosses my different rectangles here. And the neat thing is this is all reactive. So if I move this rectangle here, say we move it down to here, we'll see that those gaps go with it. Okay, if I move it over to there, it heals itself, and then if I move it back, being automatic, it will automatically place the gaps back into that. So some neat functionality, hopefully clean up some of our drafting, make things a little bit easier to see. All right, flying right along here, let's look at M-text. All right, sample I have here, this is a drawing with general notes done as a single M-text object. I think I used the same demo when we upgraded to 2007. But what I want to show for text now is a couple of things. One, just like in Microsoft Word and other products, we now get spell check underlined, so we can point out typos and words it doesn't know. So I can see right here, I fat-fingered construction, typed it wrong, so I can right-click on that, and up at the top it'll give me some suggested spellings. Well, I know that's supposed to be construction. That'll fix that one. Let me right-click on clean out, and well, I found clean outs and other options, but you know what? Maybe I'll just add that to my dictionary because I like that word, and that one will now be added. So maybe, you know, same thing with APWA, I can add that to my dictionary, or just tell it ignore all of those. Okay, so it's a nice way to kind of go through and quickly spell check your drawing. You know, hopefully won't show you your mistakes, but it'll show you where you've at least had typos and misspelled without having to go run the spell command. All right, so that's kind of cool. A couple other things I want to show with M-text is we now have what's called multi-column here. Let me zoom out a little bit so we can see this. And I'm going to zoom out. There we go. All right, what we'll see now is while I'm in my editor, I get this new icon here on the side of my M-text objects, and what I can do is I can actually change the height of my column, but what I need to do is on my toolbar here is come down here and tell it to turn columns on. So we've got a couple of options here. We do a dynamic column where it automatically sets the height of all the columns, or manual height lets me set each column height individually, or we can do static columns where I say I just want 5 columns. All right, well, I'm going to show dynamic auto height here, and what will happen now is as I grip this and drag it, you will see it will wrap to the second column. Once I get shorter than that, it'll then continue on to the third column. All right, so that is using the dynamic auto height. If I do manual height, what happens is I can actually adjust each column independently. I can say, well, make that one shorter, and I can pull that one to there. And what's nice about this is I could then have my detail or my picture here, and I can kind of format this around my piece of, around my document, more like a desktop publishing software. So I'm kind of thinking, you know, I can probably do all of my notes on my general note sheet as a single M-text object. On my toolbar here, the grips, the width is the overall width, and you can see as I widen that out, I get a larger gutter between the objects, and if I want to make each column wider, I can pick on this item here, and all the columns will adjust to the same width, and then again I can compress or change that gutter width. Okay, and we'll go ahead and pull this back, and we'll stretch this one back to there, and what the heck, I'll just turn columns off. Okay. All right, so that is columns. Again, just another formatting option. And then the last thing I want to show on here that I kind of like is on my bar here, I now have paragraph formatting as a new functionality here, and I'll just pull that up. We've had tabs in the past, but one of the things we can do now is I can change the spacing between my paragraphs, so I can control how far apart these are going to be. So say I want to go something real large, I'm at 1 1/4, let's go 5 units. Pick OK. So you can see I now get a bigger gap between my different paragraphs here. So instead of having to insert blank lines to control the spacing or the readability here, I can just come in here and change my paragraph spacing until I get something that I like, or if I need more room, I can always go to a smaller, go back to 1 here, and that'll compress my paragraphs relative to each other. And basically a paragraph is just anywhere I have a hard return in my mtext object. So that is the paragraph mtext stuff. And then let's jump over to tables now. Hopefully you guys are keeping up with me here. All right. Oop, I need to close out. Can't do a command in a command here. So let me open up. And in tables, all right, so we got some sample tables here. A couple things I want to show is as you click on a table now, and this is actually something that's been available since 2007, but it was broken in AutoCAD Map and Land Desktop. But now when you select a table, you actually get the alphabetic column headers and the numeric row indicators, just like you would in an Excel spreadsheet, to help you as you do formulas. I want to multiply B3 times C3. Okay, which is the formula I have in this cell here. So if I come in and click on that, you'll see that's B3 times C3, and now I can see, well, here's B3 is that one, C3 is that one. It just makes it a little bit easier to work on formulas. All right. Other things I can do is if I select these 2 cells here, I now get a new grip in the bottom right corner, which is a data fill grip, okay, or autofill. So if I click on that and pull it down and pick in the last row here, it will automatically continue that sequence on down. Okay, so that's called the data fill, and I can actually do it with formulas. So let me create a formula here. So I'm going to say this needs to equal I'll do the same formula, B3 times C3. Okay, and we'll pick OK to that. So now I can click on that, and just by clicking and pulling down here, it will copy that formula all the way down. So that's autofill, very similar to what we're used to in an Excel spreadsheet. Formatting now, I want these to be dollars, so let me select all those fields, right-click, and go into my data format command here. And they've now added in, and I sure don't see my dialog anywhere, do you? Okay, let me try just those cells. There we go. Okay, I didn't, because I got formulas and not formulas. I don't think it'd let me do that. But I now have an option to select currency. Well, this is old school. What we'd have to do in 2007 is I'd have to come in here and put in my $ prefix, and I want to have commas. Okay, so there I can do $signs. Whereas the cells without formulas, I can come in here, do data format, and I now have currency formatting is what I wanted. And I should have set my format before I applied my formulas. Okay, so I now have currency formatting. Pick OK, and it'll place those in. Let me add in my summation here. So again, I'll right-click on that one, and I will insert my sum formula. This is what we did in 2007. And we'll pick OK to that. So I've got my sum. Again, I can format that one. And again, if I do it with a formula, I have to manually add in my $sign. So I'm a little disappointed on that. Pick OK. Pick OK. So I've got that in there. And then the last thing I want to show is we have additional cell formats than what you had in 07. If I actually look at my table here, and my table style, and I think that's, which one am I using here? I think we were looking at point table. If I modify this, okay, what you'll see is we have these different styles, and that's not the one I'm using here. Let me, I wonder if I'm using standard here. Apologize for that. Nope, not using that one either. It's probably that one. I don't know which. Anyways, I can come in here and I can create my own cell style. So say I want one for total. And what we'll do is we'll continue. What I can do then is I can apply custom borders maybe for this style. So I can say, well, I want to have a double line, and I want to put it at the top of the cell. And actually, this should be red. And put that at the top of the cell and pick OK. And then once I've applied that is I can come in here and grab this row, right-click, and switch to and pick that total style here. And you'll see now I get that double line. So instead of me having to go into each cell and changing that line format, I can now name cell styles and easily come in and pick a group and come in here and say, well, those are, I want those to be header style. Which I probably don't want to do, but I can come back in and change it to the data style. So I can quickly have named styles that I can apply, which was going to have all my line types and my data formatting for, or not my data, but my text formatting for that style. All right, couple minutes left here. Last thing I'll look at on tables is data links. And what this allows you to do is connect a table to an Excel spreadsheet. And I'm going to do that off my table tab here on my ribbon panel. And it's going to be this first button here. It's called Data Link. So let me click on that. I've already got a data link for this material table here. So if I click on that, it will show me a preview of what that looks like. And I'm going to show you how I've created that. So I'm going to create a new Excel data link. And this will be, I don't know, we'll call it training. And we'll pick OK to that. And I have to wait for my dialog to come up here. There we go. All right, so I need to go select which file I want to use. I've already got it in here, but I could easily browse and then go to my project. And that's under my documents, estimates, and there's my material table. Pick OK to that. So it'll then open up, read that Excel spreadsheet. I can then I got two sheets in there. I can either link to the entire sheet. I can link to named ranges. Okay, I'm going to go to my material table sheet. Here's what it looks like. So if you're not sure what you're grabbing here, if I go to table 2, I think table 2's got a little bit different format to it, but I'm going to leave it on that first sheet, on that first layout. Okay, so we'll link to the entire sheet, and then we'll pick OK. So that actually created the link. All right, so that's step 1. Step 2 then is to build the table, and then instead of picking a style and drawing it is I can then go from a data link. So I'm going to pick my training data link. That's what it's going to look like. I will pick OK to that and pick my insertion point. Okay, looks good. What do you think? All right. What I'm going to do is come in here and remove all my property overrides so we can see it. The property overrides are just the table properties, not the mtext properties. But these are now linked to a spreadsheet. If I try to hover on this, if I try it's not going to let me, come on, there it goes. I get a little icon on my cursor where I get a little padlock indicating that this cell is locked, and I get the little chain links there indicating this is linked to a spreadsheet. So let me select my value here, and then I've got now data links, and I'm going to say open up my data link file, and that will open up my Excel spreadsheet here, and bear with me as, there we go. Let me get this on the screen here. Sorry, I got too many windows open. All right, so I can come in here now, and maybe our dollar value here changed. Maybe this is now 20 bucks for one of those. I will save this. And then as soon as I save it, just like an XREF, it will notify me that, hey, the source data has changed. Do you want to update your tables? So sure, I'll pick OK, update, and it will update my table. And it's updating both of them, but now my table updates. You can see that the value is now 20. All right, and the formulas, everything's been updated, and it actually did both tables because they're both linked to the same spreadsheet. I can modify a value in a table by unlocking the cell and modifying it, and then I can tell it to upload changes back to the source file. But I've not had really good luck with that. I find it's been working much better by keeping this guy locked and then only editing the Excel spreadsheet. But it's called data links, and it allows you to create a link to an Excel spreadsheet that you can then bring in and create your tables and your drawing from that. All right, so a couple minutes over. I'm not going to have time to show the PDF extension. Do take a look at the handout. It's pretty neat stuff. If you have questions on it, please give me a call. I'll gladly answer them. I do plan on creating some short AVI files to show you guys how to use those, and those will all be available through the online training. When you exit today, you will be given the exit survey, where you get to rate the different topics and sessions. I do look forward to any feedback on additional materials or items that you would like to see covered in future training sessions, or items that you thought, I'll never use this, but boy, are other situations where, yeah, I'm going to use this all the time. I'd love to learn more about it. All right, well, thanks to everybody who attended today. Hopefully you saw some good stuff here. Definitely annotative text I find pretty exciting. I like the table links here. And then also, again, encourage you to look at the PDF extension functions of Civil 3D. Thank you, everybody, and that will conclude today's session. Goodbye.